Economic circumstances are changing. People are considering what to do with their future, whether jobs are stable or not. So we wanted to put together a program, and it's really the three programs we're doing are all interconnected. So the first one today will be me talking about my own experience as an entrepreneur, my own experience in self-employment, and my own experience working on a work-life balance and what I call portfolio life. And then we'll be following that up with a related talk in about a week and a half on should you be in a business and how do you prepare yourself for that? And then the last session that we'll do near the end of the month is about franchising. And for those of you who want to be in your own business but don't necessarily have your own idea. So this is a series put together for us to be responsive to what I think is going on in the minds of people today. How do you structure the appropriate goals and build a good foundation for the next chapter of your life? And with that, I'll turn it over to my good colleague and friend Jay, who'll tell you about the wonderful library services, and then we'll get into my talk.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm Jay Lyman. I'm a librarian with the Seattle Public Library, and I'm also a program manager. And I run programs for entrepreneurs and nonprofit, those running and starting nonprofits as well too. I'm gonna, each of these three programs, I'm gonna highlight a couple of different library tools that you can use for free. And I'll share one in each of those. Today, I'm going to talk about something called Data Axle, or not Data Axle. Data Axle is going to be one of the next ones. We're going to do something called ABI Inform, and I'll share how to get to that here in a moment. And what you can do with ABI Inform is you can get to information about a market or an industry. And so this could be useful as you're thinking about and kind of planning out, your own journey, whether that's through entrepreneurship or some other method. ABI Inform can be a good place to look to see what else is going on that sort of dovetails to what I'm exploring with my career or my entrepreneurial journey. Um, I also wanted to touch on Jeff and I were talking about AI and how it's like on everyone's minds and it's coming up in a lot of different ways these days. And so another thing I wanted to just highlight generally is that the library has a lot of people are trying to learn what AI is, where it's going, where we think it's going, all that kind of thing. And we've got quite a few programs that are take different perspectives on that. Some if you're trying to learn how to use that within your job search, or you're trying to use it, or just learn about it, those kinds of things. We've got quite a few workshops and classes coming up over the next few months and beyond too. So let me just share my screen really quick because I want to get back to Jeff's, and the content he has. But I'm going to share how to find those programs that I mentioned on the library's calendar. So I'm sharing my screen. You should be able to see the library's website here at spl.org. And if you go to uh, event calendar, and then you can see all of our wonderful programs that we have all in a list here. But if you type in the keyword search AI, then it starts to demystifying AI happening this afternoon, or actually right now. But then we have these AI practitioner series. I think there's a part one further down I noticed. Here's understanding AI. Here's one with AI essentials for job skills. So we've got quite a bit of content that's happening in that world there. So take a look at those. And then for the tool I mentioned, the ABI Inform, if I go to this programs and services and then business and nonprofit, then I scroll down till I get to business research tools. And then ABI Inform is right at the top. So I'm glad that I chose that one as our first one since it's at the top of the list. right there, it would ask me for my library card and PIN number if I hadn't already entered it in. So I did that a little bit earlier. So it's already authenticating, lets me into the tool. And then with this one has like a lot of other publications in here. So if I go to my advanced search, I want to search for a set of reports called First Research. And you could type anything in here. So if you're looking for the construction industry or whatever it might be, but let's put AI in there just so we can find so First Research, I want to make the name of the publication and then AI anywhere in the publication. Click search. So here's all the different 2,161 industries that have AI somewhere in the report. So it's a lot. And so if you were, exploring interior design services and trying to figure out how is AI touching that industry, well, here's a report that was updated in January, and it talks about the industry, like how big it is. If I scroll down to the middle, there's the forecast for this industry growing over 5 years. Lots and lots of data to help you kind of explore what's keeping people up at night. What are some opportunities? How can how can I take advantage of those? Make sense? All right.
Yeah.
And I know there was a little bit of a librarian trick there, so I'd be happy to share that at the very beginning how I constructed the search with the little first research report thing too.
Hey Jay, quick question. So
Yes.
this is Karthik. So you mentioned that I can search for AI, but can I do like a super hyper search based on zip code in Seattle?
Ooh, yeah. Are you looking for like companies or market data? What would you be looking for that hyperlocal search?
I would start from the market data and then I would want to go into the company.
Yeah, so my next two are more hyper-local things. So
Oh,
Data
sorry.
Axle, but I'm not doing them today. I'm doing that's in the next two sessions that we're
Okay.
doing with Jeff. So next time we're going to cover one called Simply Analytics, which is a local market data tool, and then the one after that I'm going to cover one called Data Axle, which which is like a directory of companies, and also can be searched hyperlocal.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that too. And if you don't want to wait for for those also, they are on the website also, and I can even share in a follow-up because I'll send a follow-up. I'll send links to a couple of videos I have on Data Axle and the ABI Inform one too. Great question, Kartik. Thank you. Okay, well, Jeff, I think I'll pass the things back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jay. Just one question for you. Is there, sometimes we do like a feedback afterwards where you send out a survey. Are you doing that with this?
We could. I haven't. Let me see if I still have the survey
If you
active.
have it, yeah, I think we always appreciate this because we want the feedback so that we make sure that we're serving you guys correctly.
Definitely.
And let me make sure my screen share is going to work. It always does. And just be patient 1 second.
There we go.
Okay, and then say okay. Good. So you guys should be seeing a picture of me and then some material everybody sees on the screen.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great, great, great. Interestingly enough, that was a picture that was taken by Jay when we used to do these live at the Microsoft auditorium in the library. So we've been working together for probably over a decade at least. A little background on why this presentation was even put together, because it's a little different than the kind of business-related presentations that you might hear. I do a lot of national speaking on the topic of entrepreneurship and franchising, but I've always looked at the work as something that would provide time and space for me to have a better quality of life. So a group that had heard me speak once before asked if I would put together sort of an outline as to how one might go about working on creating a good, solid work-life balance and defining it for today's people. And so we did that. And so this has evolved from that. And it's really important for me to not make this talk be just about Jeff, but I am using my personal experiences and those experiences that I think were informing to my decisions, I'm going to pose to you as some questions. So I'd encourage you to participate where you think it's appropriate, or at least have your mind think about the questions I'll ask. And I'll invite any of you to connect with me through LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is here. And if there's a question that we have not answered here, or we can help you in any other way, feel free to reach out. So you have my email as well. Okay. So in terms of an agenda, when I talk about a portfolio life, I want to talk about managing our career intentionally rather than circumstantially. And when I think of circumstance, we sometimes find ourselves doing work uh, because of things that are opportunities that came up, but they weren't necessarily strategic uh, towards what we're trying to accomplish in our lives. And we all know we only go around one time in this life. I'll talk about different stages that happen and changes that happen in our career. How do we relate to them? How do we respond to them? Um, I'm going to talk about some very personal life experiences, and many of you probably will have shared some of them yourself, and I want to know how that's affected you and your decisions. Um, and at the end of this talk, I'm hoping to empower you to have more responsibility over owning your career. And then as this presentation evolved, people had asked me to add two things to it. One is how do we purposefully network? And I'm not going to use some of the traditional things we think about, but particularly today, I think it's who you know, who knows you, that creates opportunities. And I'll also touch upon the subject of written communications and how they can be an accelerant in our lives. With that, is that agenda okay for the group that's with us today? If you're expecting something like this, the secret to life, we'll have to work on that together. Okay. Thank you, Kartik. Okay. Where I am, some of you guys might recognize this, beautiful Northwest. This is a picture down in Oregon coast, of course. I put this slide up because one of the things, and we're not going to go into these in detail, but I don't think I could do this presentation without emphasizing how important your health is to creating a portfolio and a good work-life balance. And I've always been someone who has reasonably worked on my health from the neck down, a lot of exercise and doctor visits. And as I've gotten older, worked on my health from the neck up, meaning really taking measurements of brain speed and being a little bit more cognizant of things that we can do to stay healthy into our 80s and 90s and who knows beyond then. So message to you here is be thoughtful about all the aspects, because I don't think you'll ever get the work-life balance until you make sure that your health is in place. So when I talk about the elements of a portfolio life, and I've had some misconceptions where people would say, well, I've got two jobs or three jobs. That's not what I'm talking about. I think of the word portfolio life when we maybe think about financial investing. We're going to put money in different categories with different risks, different time frames. And for me, this graphic really shows what are the key elements that I work on all the time as it relates to this portfolio life. So I mentioned health, really important. Spiritual was going to be different, mean different things to different people. But relationships with people around us, both our family and friends, is something that we invest in to have a better work-life balance. We may have personal interests. In the last year, seriously took up saxophone lessons. And when you take something up as seriously as I have, you can actually make some progress. So you might even recognize a tune if I played it. And of course, work. I think work is a key element in our portfolio life because if you think of work as something that is a gear or is a lever, that if it's put in place correctly, helps you achieve some of these other things that are important. Okay. And of course, a little bit of how I define myself. This is a picture actually taken in Iceland in one of the most beautiful spots there. But my wife and I are sort of in this sort of sandwich generation between our aging parents, our children, and our grandchildren. As we've matured and grown up, unfortunately, we've lost all our parents, so our focus is back on our kids. But it brings to mind, and one of my challenges to you, if we were to meet in a cocktail party or meet on a train or a bus, like one of our guests here is currently on, and I said to you, tell me about yourself. Would you talk about your professional career, or could you talk about who you are and what makes you different, what makes you special? And so that's one of the things we want to sort of tease out today in this conversation. On a practical basis, when I say I have a portfolio life, it is a very, Jay knows, a very busy life. I have a coaching business that I work at. Really important for me to spend time on community activities. I'm very involved with the SCORE, with the Small Business Administration, with different universities. I write, lecture. And also spend time. I just came back from 2 months in Southern California. So my wife and I wanted to get out of the bad weather, and we were able to do that. And I've created sort of my work part of my life I can do anywhere because of the benefit of Zoom. Um, I'm also someone that likes some recognition, so I co-authored a book. And by the way, we're being hosted by the library, so if anybody wants to read the book, it is available in the library, which I'm very pleased to be part of that system. I always wanted a Dewey Decimal number in my life, and I finally achieved that. But I'm also someone who likes affirmations. Someone who says, "Hey, you did a good job." That's one of the reasons why I work as hard as I do. So let me start sharing some personal things that have informed why I've made certain choices. And here I'm going to be putting you guys on the spot a little bit, and hopefully you'll participate. So I come from Brooklyn, New York, raised by a single mom. Parents were divorced when I was very young. Had to live with an aunt and an uncle. Uh, the message was always, we couldn't afford this, we couldn't afford that. And the reason I share that is as I got older, I never wanted to be in that position with my kids. So I started finding my own motivation, maybe out of the roots of some negative things. And I ended up playing a lot of sports. It's a great way to get rid of some anger and frustration. But I will share with this group, I was a mediocre student, just about graduated high school in New York. And I'm glad I can say just about because I'll share with you in a few minutes one of the benefits of graduating high school back in those days in New York. And I grew up with no encouragement. So it's not a very pretty picture. But one of the learning moments that I think it's worthwhile sharing with folks like yourself is I couldn't change that. And no matter what I did, I couldn't change that, but I could change how I responded to it. And I think that sort of itch to do something different really started out when I was younger. So I want to ask you, and if you'd like to participate, anything in your particular upbringing that either positively or negatively has impacted how you've made career decisions or your work-life balance decisions. And you can feel free to put a comment in the text if you like, or we'd love to hear you. Okay. So again, when I look at myself, I mentioned I was a horrible student, and it's not that I was a dummy. I just didn't really care, didn't really know why work hard. Anyway, back in the day when I graduated in high school from Brooklyn, the city made a deal with you. If you got an academic degree, you were guaranteed a free education at a community college or a four-year college in the city of New York. And these were high quality schools. So I got into a community college, and you notice my graphic is a light bulb. The light bulb went off, and I'm not sure I totally appreciated it, but I knew that this was an opportunity that I could not squander. I could not become a bad student at the community college. I had to apply myself completely. I recognized that I did have a gift, and the gift probably is not as giving as it is today as it was then, but I had an amazingly strong memory. It was almost like a rote memory, meaning I could listen to the teacher lecture, I could read the book, and pretty much just play it back. And that ended up I think I graduated first in the class of the community college. Um, and then I was lucky enough in my life at that time to have my first mentor, and I've had several mentors in my career. Um, those of you who may not have mentors, it's a wonderful topic to talk about. So it actually was my Spanish teacher, and Lindsey, when you talked about learning that language, it just reminded me a little bit about who he was. He talked to me about going to a college called Fordham University. And I'm a Jewish kid from Brooklyn, and going to a Jesuit college was like so far out of my thinking. But what he talked to me about was values and giving back and getting a high quality education at the same time. So I applied to and got into Fordham. And so my learning moment here, again, I try to encourage people to have these antennae. Don't go through life so focused on the present that you don't see the benefit of opportunities that may be presented to yourself. So when I got accepted to Fordham and the community college, I really saw these opportunities for change. And I was going to commit myself as a really serious student to take advantage of what those changes might mean. And so today, as you go through life, I want you to just be sensitive to what's really going on there. And sometimes getting from A to Z requires you to go to B to C to D to E to F. You have to go through the different stages, keeping your mind on what the long-term goal is. So this is I think there's a couple of takeaways here that I hopefully feel will be helpful to you. So I began my career running from things, and it may be that at least the two people that participated can relate to that. There were some things that came out of your background that you did not want to experience in your life, so you put energy into moving forward. What I found, though, is if I spent my life running from things, I could be amazingly productive, but I also can get tired pretty quickly. And so there was a point, and I was probably in my mid 50s, and hopefully most of you guys are younger than that, and you'll recognize some of the benefits. Instead of running from things, I started running towards things, meaning I started to become serious about taking responsibility for setting goals, setting expectations, setting a vision for things that I wanted to accomplish. And we often are afraid of setting goals because if we don't meet them, then we're a failure. But if it's a good goal, if it's reasonable, if you're putting in place the things you need, and to me that this big goal today is this work-life balance, it's always a work in progress. You're always working towards the things that are important to you. So maybe keep in mind that if you're not setting goals today, if you're not putting a short and long-term plan together for things you want to do, you may become frustrated and you may run out of energy because running towards something is more powerful than running from something. I'm going to take a quick drink. Does anybody have any comments on that? those sort of words of my best wisdom. Okay. Well, hopefully at least the hamster wheels are going around and you're thinking about these things a little bit. So I started becoming a little bit more focused, and then of course life gets in the way. And I'm sure we've all had life experiences that have perhaps set us back or challenged us. So for me, it was getting married young. Not a surprise. I wanted to get out of the house as quickly as I could, get into a different environment, not sure where I was going, and it ended up in divorce. Interesting enough, my mom probably was married 6 or 7 times, and so that was the last thing I wanted. But unfortunately, that happened. I did have a near death experience. And that was probably one of the most life-changing events I've ever experienced. I was at a conference and was eating a piece of meat at a carving table and couldn't breathe, couldn't talk. I knew what was going on. And by the grace of whatever higher power there is, somebody came over and did the Heimlich maneuver and saved my life. Otherwise, my wife would have been a young widow. And I'll tell you from that day on, and I share this story with you because we never know how long we have on this earth, but you really, really want to appreciate every day. So I started reevaluating my time, deciding what I wanted, what are things were time wasters, what were things that moved me closer to my goal from that experience. And then by the time I was 53, if any of you check on my LinkedIn, I had a pretty good career going as an entrepreneur. And one day had an ethical disagreement with my partners and was forced to leave the company at 53. So as I look at these examples, I say, what did I learn from them? Were these things that pushed me back, made me a negative person? Or did I start realizing that when a door closes, another one opens, and the issue of my career would not be under someone else's control, and the things that are important, they would be under my direct control. So a question for you, if you feel like sharing, were there any significant life-changing events that you can now reflect on and say, did they impact the decisions I've made? I'll try to address your question, and if I haven't after I've made these comments, then I would appreciate if you'd maybe ask me more specifically. So at 53, I had this great position. I was a partner in a manufacturing company, and one day I realized that I just could not go to work anymore. I could not go to work anymore. Simple as that. And had conversations with my family. It actually was one of the greatest moments. I have a wife and two. At that point, they were teenagers, and and the family all agreed that if I was that unhappy, that we will figure out a way of moving forward with our lives and doing something else. My wife was actually getting her doctorate at that time, so a full-time student with a 4-year commitment. My youngest son had just been launched out of the house, oldest just launched out of the house, youngest was still in college. And so, Kartik, to your question, my wife said to me, look, because we will work this out, what I would like you to do is sit down with a journal and don't spend time on the elements relating to your professional career. You know you can get another job. You know what your background is and what your market worth is. Really think about what do you want to accomplish in these next 25 years of your life. And so that was the foundation. I was sort of given permission by my family and to myself to really think about a more encompassing life strategy. So when you ask the question, my best suggestion is to get a journal or dictate, take the limitations off your shoulders about why you can't do things, and really think about what's important. So I started out putting together some measurable goals that I wanted to achieve in my life. I realized, and this is difficult, that at 53 years old, I had a huge learning curve to go up. I was going to start making dramatic changes. And I'll talk a little bit more about what these elements were, but it was goals that related to things that I was not able to do when somebody else was controlling my time. Okay. And the journaling was a great tool for me. And I still, if I look down on one of my shelves, I still have that journal. I still look at it. I still refer to it because it was very important. And my learning moment here, and this, some people who sit through this talk have a problem with this, but for me, it worked. And my learning moment was I was going to put down a plan A. And that plan A was not my work. My work would be the accelerant or the tool to allow me to achieve the things that are important, and therefore no plan B. How many of you have said, well, I have a plan A, but if it doesn't work, I always have a fallback to plan B. So let anybody raise their hand and tell us that you've actually fallen into that. So I wanted to write. So I came up with methods, started doing blogs, started putting material together, got together with a young man who wanted to write, and we co-authored a book together. Um, I wanted to be involved in my community. And so I became a mentor at both University of Washington and Seattle University. Um, so I started thinking about those things. I wanted to be able to travel more. So the things that went into my work-life balance were things that I wasn't sure how I was going to accomplish them, how quickly they would happen, but I knew I didn't want to go through life and regret that I never communicated with my kids. I never spent time with them. We have a special relationship to our grandchildren because it was a non-negotiable thing. How we were going to make that work was not clarified at that point. But anyway, that's what I worked on. It didn't happen in a day, it didn't happen in 2 days. It took me a couple of months of sitting down with the journal and clarifying what was important going forward. And I realized that if they didn't happen in a week or a month or in 2 months, it didn't mean they weren't extremely important. It just meant I had to work on them a little bit more thoughtfully and intelligently and integrate them in with other things that I was doing. There's a foundation piece to all of this. And again, I'm going to challenge you with it because it's not easy to do. And I think the foundation piece is defining what are your values as a person. Because when you are clear on your values, it does make it easier to make decisions as to what you do and where you spend your time. And I share these with you because, and this is back, I did this in 2002. And they haven't changed because again, I thought through, are these fundamentally how I want to be known? And so I would suggest to you, if you're working on this portfolio life and want to make decisions that move in the direction of your vision, be clear on what your goals are. And when you put a goal down, be clear on defining it. What does it really mean to you? So I have an entrepreneurial spirit, and what it means basically is I am willing to take balanced risks to get further in life. Taking a job I don't think is necessarily a risk. Starting some kind of a business I think has some risk associated with it, but it was critical to being able to achieve what I wanted to do. Hopefully, this is a pitch for the next couple of sessions. Hopefully, some of you will attend the Should You Be in Your Own Business or considering a franchise, because that's the direction I leaned, and it facilitated doing what was important to me. Credibility, being a responsible human being. And these are values. So if you were to meet some of my friends and ask them to describe who I was, I'm hoping that these are things these are values that they would be able to articulate. a sense of urgency. Don't wait till tomorrow to do something you can do today. Um, Goal driven, we've talked about that, but be an ethical person. Don't lie, don't cheat. We don't need to do that to get ahead in this world. Um, be a lifetime learner. Again, my values, I want you to do your own. And then open communications. One person once taught, a mentor once taught me that full disclosure with good intentions is a great value to have in life. Meaning, you're not going to, if you say things that are candid and honest in a caring way, it enhances relationships with other people. So these are my values, and if you take this effort that we talked about today seriously, hopefully you will sit down and work on your values as well. Don't put it off till tomorrow. So and again, this goes back to Karthik's question a little bit. I did realize that I had to have, at 53 years old, with my wife still in college, one kid in college, a mortgage, a whole life ahead of us, I did have to have an economic engine. So these were the goals and expectations I put together for myself from a business point of view. The things I needed economically, the relationship to work. And again, after you build your values, we tend to look at job descriptions and see if we fit into them. What I'm suggesting to you is maybe work on your own job description and see how do you make that fit? Does it fit in only because you start your own business, or does it fit in because you've chosen a company or a job carefully? So I'm going to take a quick drink. Anybody have any comments on those two pieces we just talked about? The value system and setting the goals for the kind of work you want to do. So I want to talk about just some things going on in the economy today, and boy, that's changing daily. So this will be a couple of weeks old. I think when we look at our career, we have to realize that there is going to be some point where we're just not getting any further. And we get to that point, I've learned from a good friend, and I listen very intently to the people I communicate with, that if you're working in a company and you're in a creative role, meaning you're literally working on the future, probably have more job security. If you're implementing the future that you help create, reasonable job security. If you're just maintaining things, it's likely that companies are going to look to lay you off because you're just not in that productive of a mode. So realize, just be in touch with what's going on if you are working for somebody else. And again, as a reminder, understand that life is finite. I learned that lesson through that experience I had before. And there isn't a day that goes by that I don't really appreciate how important life is. Are any of you in a career transition today where you might have lost a job or in process of trying to find the next step, next professional step?
Got a thumbs up
I got a
there.
thumbs up.
Unfortunately, yes, also in the chat.
Okay, good. So I probably will ask you guys again if you feel free to, if you feel like participating. Um, because of a transition at this particular time, has it changed your priorities in terms of what you're looking to do as your next steps? So a couple of things that just to give you some idea of what's going on in the world. This is now a couple of years old, but I think it still applies. Barclays Bank looked at the 21st century life cycle and basically said that people are starting careers later today. They tend to be siloed in one career. It might be marketing or human resources or IT or programming, and they're in that career most of their life. It's not portfolio, it's very focused. And then a career break is very common when we get to our 50s. And unfortunately, it does come out of age discrimination sometimes, or right now companies are looking to reduce headcount by using artificial intelligence. So this number, this career break probably is going to become a little bit more intense. And so many people start second careers in their mid 50s. So again, part of why, Jay and I have agreed to do these next two sessions is that oftentimes people are not prepared for doing something where they are, this is a horrible analogy, but signing the front of the check versus the back of the check. No, nobody uses checks anymore, but you know what I'm talking about. It's being the responsible person. And we start career, and the idea of retirement just gets pushed back. I see a smiley face. Thank you, Kartik. Um, I turned 77 last month, and as long as I think I'm reasonably coherent, I don't know if I'll ever retire because the work I do is something that I enjoy. And I wish that for all of you guys. If you go through this thought process, perhaps you can achieve that as well. And today, the statistics are that more and more people are finding that employment or that satisfaction in life by doing something on their own rather than working for somebody else. You can look at these statistics, on your own. But we do know that the dream of sort of like a middle management and a title today is an area where companies are cutting back significantly. So my best advice is be prepared. Don't wait till you lose a job to start working on these work-life balance things, working on your goals, working on your journals, working on your values. So one of the things that I would say to anyone on this call, just to encourage you to follow some of the things I've learned, realize that today, if you work for somebody else, there really are fewer opportunities for investment. Span of control across management today is very, very broad. When I started my career, you had 6 to 8 people working for one manager. They were responsible for your career development. Today, because of technology, you might have one manager working with 50 people. You don't have that ability to grow in your career. A lot of politics, too much in the world, too much in the work environment as well. We all realize that this pace of change has really accelerated. And people who are wondering about what to do next in their career, who aren't prepared with their vision, I think are going to struggle a little bit. Um, and to my comment with Lindsey before, sometimes, work is great, but if you are clear on the things that are important to you, look for support and growth outside of work. It can be extremely rewarding. And last comments before I go into a couple of other topics. I started to mention in the beginning that if you sit back and look at your career, look at the work you do, look at how you pay your mortgage or your rent, it probably wasn't strategic. It probably was a circumstance that got you on that track. And hopefully what you've taken from this talk today is to be more intentional. Why do I work? What do I want to get from it? What do I want it to provide for me in terms of quality of life? So I'm going to switch over to the two other topics I talked about, the writing and the networking. Before I do that, anybody have any comments or things that maybe I can clarify or could have spent more time on? You and let's, as a general topic, call these networking tips. It sounds like many of us here are from the Seattle area. And as long as I've been here, and I moved here in 1984, it is who you know, who knows you. Are you someone who is a giver or a taker in the community? If you give, people are very responsive and it'd be very helpful. So um, if you get off your couch and get out in the community, that's where the opportunities are. And always be willing to give somebody the gift of your presence. Don't do speed dating. Don't give people the impression that if they can't help you, you're moving on to the next. Give people that gift of your time. Be genuinely interested in what's going on in their life, what they're doing, some of the things are that they're trying to accomplish. Um, Be part of your community. I this has been when I sort of freed myself from that sort of corporate partnership I was in. It was very, I'd leave home on Sunday, come home on Friday, travel the world. I decided to become a mentor at Seattle University. Um, when the Black Lives Matter pro issues were going on, I aligned myself with some community groups that I felt shared values, and I used some of the skills I had to try to help the organization. Extremely rewarding, and became part of my life goals to serve. Um, don't hesitate to do simple acts of kindness. It doesn't have to be what's in it for you. Um, there's a famous author named Dale Carnegie who said you can get anything you want in life if you help other people get what they want. If you think about that for a moment, that's profound. I haven't said anything as profound as that guy. But if you help others, it really does come back to you. Um, Also, think about always modeling the behavior that you want in this world. Um, Years ago, I went through a program that was designed to sort of surface what were my triggers, what were the things that sort of made me react in a negative way towards other people. And then we've all been there where someone, let's say, pushes their button or triggers them, and we tend to respond in a negative way that people treated us. And so just be aware of what your trigger is and always try to model the behavior that you want. And again, I think that creates more opportunities and more quality of life. Um, don't waste time with energy vampires. I could just tell everybody on here is giving us positive energy. If there's people that are negative, they tell you what you can't do, why you shouldn't do it. We just don't have the time for that in this world. Be around positive people. Those of you who want to do something in your own business, hang out with entrepreneurs. There's a lot of opportunities today to go to programs like Jay and I are putting on the next few weeks. There's meetup groups. There's a lot of very positive things going on in the entrepreneurial community. Uh, I want you to consider reading a couple of books. These two were on and I'm sure the library must have them as well. Never Eat Alone and Who's Got Your Back talk about building communities of friends and professionals around you to help support what you're trying to do. And Lindsey, to you, that this is important because that's one of your life goals is to be around people that have similar values, trying to accomplish similar things. I went one step further when I was, gosh, this probably goes back 10 years ago now. A young man who I have tremendous regard for, who never graduated college but was very successful in his own right, said that he wanted to write a book just to increase his credibility. He didn't have an MBA next to his name or anything like that. And after we talked about it, we decided that we would co-author a book. I just explained his reasons. My reasons are it just gave me a way of expressing things that I've learned in the business side that would be valuable to share with other people. Um, so writing a book and publishing it was the best decision I ever made from a career point of view, but one of the hardest decisions ever made. Because, once you do a book, if it's not a totally electronic version, you can't go change it. It gets printed. We had 500 copies printed first, no, 2,500 first thing. And if it wasn't a good book, we were sunk. I'm glad to say last time I checked, about 110 five-star Amazon reviews. But the book was a way of another way of representing life work. It was very humbling to work with a partner on it. And we decided that the ideas of the book would rise or fall based on whether they're good ideas, not our age difference. I was 30 years older than he was. So I'll ask, has anybody on this call today thought of or have written a book? Okay, so just a little bit of purpose of the book that I did is it's not a book about necessarily how to start a business. It's more on the mindset of where you need to be in order to take those calculated risks to move forward. It sort of integrates with the idea of the portfolio life because from my experience, when you work for someone else, you are giving up some of that important control and your own decision making. So you probably got a little bit of my theme here that I am a believer that self-employment um, is probably one of the key cornerstones to successfully have a portfolio life. I wanted to always work if I enjoyed it. The concept of retirement to me at a particular age had no merit. It didn't make sense to me that there was an age at which I stopped working and started living. What made sense to me is could I create a life that was enjoyable and was good for me and my family and the community, and still make a living. So the things I want to share with you guys is that today, uh, even if you work for someone else, you're self-employed. Companies with a 60-day notice can say, we love you, but we'll miss you, and they can have you go. A lot of opportunities today, only limited by your own creativity or maybe even your willingness to explore franchising, which are more predictable models that allow you to implement a business that has a proven history behind it. And then lastly, if my talk today encouraged some of you to think about self-employment, be around other people with the same mindset. If you hang around people that say, "Oh, nope, you don't want to work 24 hours a day, you don't want to be married to the business, you want to close off the lights and leave at 5 o'clock," those are people that tend to rain on the parade because of their own fears, and they're not willing to make the kind of changes that we're talking about today. So I want to end up with maybe recapping some closing insights, recommend some readings to you guys. And as we always promise, is to leave some time for any open questions that you might have. And again, as Jay knows, I'm a big boy. If someone disagrees, my feelings aren't hurt. It'll just be a learning moment. So we really want to hear your feedback. So to recap, realize that no matter how smart you are, we all have blind spots. I love the saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You're not going to grow if you're the smartest person in the room. Find out who your true friends and mentors are and trust them to give you constructive, positive feedback. I can talk for quite a while on stories where I have been a mentor of others and people have mentored me, and they've been life-changing. Work on who you are, maybe not versus what you do, but in addition to what you do. I mean, obviously, your work represents certain life skills that you've developed, some professional skills. But unless you can explain to somebody what your values are, how you want to be known, what's your, let's use the word epitaph or legacy, what that really is, you really, I think, are missing a key part in life. And realize that the risk and reward are created with an attraction to each other. And don't leave Earth regretting things that you didn't do because you were afraid to do them, or you were, or being afraid manifested itself by saying, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow," or "I'll do it when I'm retired." Those are indications of being afraid. So a couple of books. And I got to check if this link still works. I think it does. New York Times has changed their policies a little bit, but the link is basically a thumbnail of this book. And the book talks about not your resume, but it talks about how you would like to be known for the good stuff you do on this earth. A very productive book, very much enjoyable. And David Brooks is a brilliant, insightful writer. My wife gave me this book. which I thought was interesting. You've been kind enough today to listen to my story. This is a book of probably, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe 20 vignettes of people that have made significant changes in life as they got a little older. And again, sometimes we don't have to, we can learn from other people before we make significant changes. I keep looking to my right because actually I was in a book called Life Changers After 40, which someone identified significant changes that I did. And it's sort of fun if you actually get in a book. Um, so what are our next steps? If we could just winnow down our talk today, what are you guys going to do that might make a difference in your life? So I do think you need a practical assessment of where you are today in terms of your skills, in terms of your economic position. Um, if you don't have a financial planner or access to one, that's been a very helpful, even when we had nothing in our early 30s, we were just starting out, we did have access to someone who would put a roadmap together to get us to the point of when we could choose to retire, not when we would retire, but when we could choose to retire and worked on that. So practical, objective assessment using some outside sources, really important. Don't live a life that is only within boundaries of safety, because within the boundaries of safety, you don't you reduce the chances significantly of reaching bigger things. Be a lifetime learner. I deeply appreciate people who come to these sessions that follow the library. Um, Being a lifetime learner is absolutely critical. These are just some of the reasons why people make changes, not overly important. But a profound statement by someone other than myself is that, if you only limit the things in your life to what you're comfortable with, I guarantee you'll deny yourself things that are possible that might be more important. So with that, we've got this slide. This is a pre-pandemic beard that you guys, or without the beard pre-pandemic. You've got my contact information if you have questions. There's an actual interview that I did. Someone interviewed me. It was a gentleman who was an MBA student that I mentored about 20 years ago. And through different circumstances, he became a financial advisor to me as he got into his profession. And he also, as his hobby, he is a world-class mixed martial arts trainer. And one of the reasons I mention it is I asked him, why did you get into that sport? And he goes, it's the only sport you can get into where if you make a mistake, you get immediate feedback. And I thought that was a pretty insightful comment. So he's following his goals. Um, Jay, any comments from your side? And if not, we'll leave the window open and try to address any comments or questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for this presentation. Just a reminder, this is part one of three. You don't have to do all of them, but you can do as many as make sense for you. And I put the links to register for each of those other two in the chat there. And I think I'll turn off the recording and so I'll thank you here and I'll thank you again afterwards. But thank you for putting this together and for sharing with us today, Jeff. And thank you all for being here too.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Jay. And yeah, the other sessions are a little bit more tactical in terms of if you want to be in your business, steps you got to do, things you need to be aware of, support in your community, both free and some non-free services. We get into some really good practical things. And on the franchising side, I've personally I am a franchise owner. That's my current business. And I've helped over 400 people start franchises, so it's an area of some fairly deep expertise as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Well,
they,
thank you.